Hello,
Hello, how are you?
I'm here.
Hello.
Here. Hello, Angie, you're on your side. How did you do that?
I turned it sideways there.
You're learning acrobatics in this
Right.
coronavirus.
Is she standing on her head?
I
It
was
is
with the
impressive.
ceiling on my-
Hello, Sarah.
I don't think you can speak yet.
Hi.
Hi,
Oh,
Sarah.
Hello, Marcia.
How are you, Sarah?
I'm okay.
Good.
Hope you are.
Yeah.
I'm here too.
Hello, Paul.
I was going to ask, where's Paul?
I'm just saying,
There's Heather. Hi, Heather.
We each have a computer side by side, so togetherness, isn't it
Yeah.
wonderful?
You
know.
guys trying to do social distancing.
If anybody would have told me 20 years ago we'd need 2 computers and a laptop and
Yeah, Tucson.
two cell phones that do everything, and
Oh, we have a laptop.
we have another laptop. This is an iPad. And, I mean, good grief.
You all are high tech.
Oh, yeah.
Spoiled rotten is what I am. Well, what you do is you go to your kids and you say, gee, I'm thinking about an iPad. And before you know it, he's got one ordered for you that only costs you.
Oh, you mean he didn't pay for it?
Oh, I buy everything.
Woohoo!
He picks up the check most times when we go out to eat. Although Kevin did trick us one time this year, and he took the check before we knew it.
Oh, it's granddad's prerogative.
It is a granddad's prerogative.
It is.
Unless Sonny has quick hands.
I hear you're back to work, Angie.
I am.
That's
I was hurting so bad on Monday. It was not fun.
I've liked your pictures that you've posted online. All your
Yeah, we're
stuff.
trying to get the word out. It's actually really busy.
Good.
That is
amazing. So
I thought it'd be down because of, not being able to take flowers to hospitals and stuff.
yeah, but everybody sends it to their home, to the home, because nobody can go out.
Okay.
So, but we'll see what happens.
Well, that's good. And Mother's Day is coming up, so.
Yes. So I came back at the right time and everything.
Whoopee.
Well, Mike said your boss had a problem or something.
My boss's husband has had a stroke, so
Hello.
she's out of commission because
Can you
he's
hear me?
being sedated pretty heavily, so he can't do really anything.
Okay.
So that was one of the reasons why I said, yeah, I'll come to work. I don't want you to worry about anything. So she micromanages from the phone now. So his surgery's not till next Thursday. So we'll see how that goes.
It's a good thing you came back.
Yeah. So. Yep, it's good.
Well, all here. It's good to see you. And I did hear from Marla. She's not going to join us tonight, so I don't know. No one else has told me they're coming, so we'll go ahead and get started since our time is short. I've been kind of doing a brief overview of Zoom. Is anyone new? I mean, do you want me to explain the features, or do you know what's going on? Judy, have you done? I know you were with us last week, but you came in late. Have you done Zoom meetings?
I have, not with you all, but with another group.
Okay, so everybody kind of knows what you're looking at, all your features. And just as a reminder, the meeting is recorded and goes up later for people to watch later. If there's anything in it that you want edited out, or if you just don't want to be in it at all, that is absolutely okay. Just let me know that.
Well, does it count if we quote the lady who was Nadia, if we quote her, and because some of it I'm not sure was ready for prime time. So
It's sometimes very colorful. Yes, I hope you got the message that her language is not always. It's not always kid friendly. That's who she is. I hate that actually. I think she's hilarious and fun, and I love what she has to say. But because of her language, I don't feel like I can use her quite as much as I would otherwise, because I don't feel like I can play it in the church, and I don't feel like I can sometimes. If you've got
but
kids around, it may not be.
She speaks to a lot of people, though.
yes, she does.
And I think that's important too, to reach that group of people that think that all this is taboo and stuff. And
I just watched her one on forgiveness today. Forgiveness. Megan Roper from formerly Westboro Baptist Church. Wow, talk about.
I don't remember if I've seen that one, and I'll have to watch. Was it on Work of the People?
No, it was. I signed up for her Corners page that she sends out every day, and it was her email. And so I watched it today and listened to it on the podcast, and wow, that was the people that called in on that were amazing. In terms of some were really angry with her, others were able to forgive her and move on, and she was grown up in that environment, where hate was taught from day one. And by the time she was 5, she was out protesting in front of churches and other businesses that supported LGBTQ, issues and so on. And she handled it very well, I thought, with some of the anger that people expressed.
I would say she would almost rather be in an environment where people would accost her rather than one where people were simply polite.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is not the culture we're familiar with, but in fact, I think even her language and her delivery speaks to a certain generation.
Yes.
that some of the rest of, I think Angie was right, because some of the other people might not be able to reach that certain niche of people.
Yeah.
Right.
If you aren't familiar with her, I have a lot of copies of her book, her first book. She has a couple now, but her first one, every time I go to McKay's, I buy it because it's super cheap, and I think it's a very valuable resource. It does have, it's full of language. So I always sort of put that out there. If you're offended by swear words, it's not the book for you. But it talks about how she got into the ministry, which if you're not familiar with her, is a neat story. She grew up very fundamentalist, and she got into drugs and alcohol very heavily. And she was in every way in all kinds of trouble. And what she said was, it was interesting that they had a death in this sort of drug circle that she was in. And they rallied around her and asked her to do the eulogy. And she was not a pastor at the time. She was a drug addict. And they rallied around her, and she said, why me? And they said, because you're so full of hope, so she became known as the pastor among this group for no good reason, except that she just sort of had this spiritual nature about her. So she got herself clean and went to seminary, and she is now an ordained Lutheran pastor. She started a church called the House for All Sinners and Saints, and she has since stepped down. She's not the pastor anymore. She does a lot of public speaking, so she's not their pastor anymore. But it's a really interesting church. It's full of exactly the people that you think would be there. That she says she calls them the band of misfits. It's people who don't find a church worshiping body anywhere else. That she has embraced them, and so she is really ministering to a group of people that the church was missing. And I think that's really, really very valuable. So.
But it sounds like the ministry that she's doing would be a lot like the ministry that Jesus did.
Yes.
Because he did not minister to those that everybody thought were acceptable. He ministered to those who were the misfits.
Yeah, I talked to Sam last night after I watched this and asked him if he knew about that church. My son lives in Denver. He says, yeah, he says it's right in the heart of Denver, in probably the worst neighborhood that you could have a church in. And that church is overflowing every Sunday, he says. So they're meeting a need. I know that.
So she began did you all get a chance to watch the video? Anyone not able to log into it?
I watched it the first time, but the second time I tried to watch it, I couldn't get the sound, so that's sort of not good. And the first time I watched it, I found her a bit confusing at times.
I was
I
gonna
really
say there
needed to
was,
watch it several times to get the gist of all of it.
yeah, there was a big word right at the beginning, substitutionary atonement, and you're like, substitutionary atonement, what does that mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she does use churchy words. She is an ordained pastor, and so sometimes these churchy words kind of pop out. So she says that she grew up with substitutionary atonement. The idea of that, if this is a churchy word that is not familiar to you, the idea of substitutionary atonement is basically, to kind of boil it down into 30 seconds, it is that God's wrath at humanity had to be fulfilled by punishing someone. Rightfully, it would be humankind, because we're the ones that did all of the nasty things. However, Jesus steps in, says, I will take it for him. Jesus dies on the cross, satisfies the wrath of God, and we are free. That is substitutionary atonement. It's not particularly reformed. It's not really what we, it's not that it's wrong. I'm not telling you that substitutionary atonement is wrong, but it's not the primary teaching of the Presbyterian Church.
But
So,
that was the way I was raised.
Yes.
That's pretty much exactly what my church said.
Yeah. And again, that if that's where your faith is, there's nothing wrong with it. She obviously does not buy into it. I will never preach it. It's just not. It's not the path that I approach approach the atonement by means of. So she describes it as God has this little boy, loves this little boy so very much, and so very much that he then has to kill him. And when you kind of put it that way, you start to say, like, wait a minute, it doesn't add up, does it? It doesn't make sense. So I think that's where she's looking at it very differently, because she says that takes away from the idea of the Trinity. Did you catch that? She didn't dive into it very much. What did you think about that?
Say something.
She was right.
But the way she explained it was so. After she explained it, it made so much sense.
Yes.
It's like it was not his little boy on the cross. It was God on the cross. It wasn't a substitute for anybody. It was that God, and at the very beginning when she said, it was like God said, I am over all this sin accounting, let's be done with this. And it was like, it really was eye-opening when she said it was not God's son up there. It was the second part of the Trinity was on that cross.
Yeah.
And that made chills.
Yeah. Earlier in this, if you were with us when we were back in the building, we watched a video earlier on where they actually talked about what we're afraid to say, God died. We killed God. Like, we put God on the cross and we killed God, and we're afraid to say that. And so we talk about Jesus dying, and that softens it a little bit for us, because the idea of saying we killed God, that God died, is just it's too much for some of us to get our heads around. And the guy that did that lesson said, or I think it was a lady actually, she said, you have to go all the way down. You have to be there in the tomb, realizing that that's where we put God. And I think that's kind of the path that she was taking, that Nadia Bolz Weber was taking too. That we get confused when we say the Son of God, that we imagine like his little kid, like a little toddler, and this is, God taking care of his little boy, and they become two very different entities.
But I also love the fact when she was talking at the beginning about the fact that he had the choice to call down the angels, and he chose powerlessness, and how redemptive that really was. And I'm thinking, who of us would absolutely choose to not use any power, to yield it up and to be just totally powerless? But that's what he chose to be.
Yeah. And part of that has to do, I think, with the fact that he was so much in tune with God as being, that was the only way it could happen, was if God took on the sins himself,
right,
or herself, and allowed that to happen. So it's not new to me, but I know for some people it would be kind of new.
So, when you think about it, you can't really say that we killed God if he chose the powerlessness. He had the power not to be killed if that's what he decided.
Okay.
And that he was an active participant.
He was.
Was saying Johnny, realizing he had all the power, he got down and washed the disciples' feet.
Yes.
Like that. When I think about Christ, I don't think him as a little boy. I mean, that analogy doesn't work for me. There's a local artist, I think, that paints him as a prize fighter. And I see him more powerful than a little boy, personally.
I agree.
I mean, I understand the analogy. I understand what you're saying there. I have no problem with that he is God. And not Christ. Okay, now I'm getting back to what she says. I was he was a little boy, okay?
But I think she was being sarcastic when she was talking about Jesus as a little boy.
Yeah, I think she reduced it to its essence, the argument that she's arguing. Yeah.
And the problem is, go ahead.
I'm trying to wrap my head around, if not substitutionary atonement, which I completely agree with her, then what? I don't understand exactly what she was saying, because when she repeated it in a different way, it still sort of sounded like substitutionary atonement. I don't know.
Maybe we should at some point go through, we could spend an entire semester studying theories of atonement. Oh, I think I'm locked. Am I on here, maybe?
You're on.
I think I froze for a second. There are a lot. As many as there are Christians, there are theories of atonement, but there are some that given some categories to. So substitutionary atonement is a fairly well accepted one in the more fundamental churches. We tend to the Reformed Church tends to fall under more of like the Christus Victor theory of atonement, which you can read about this all day long as well. But basically, the idea is that, and this is, like Paul was saying, he gives Christ a lot more power. This one does as well. We have sort of Christ coming into the world, into a broken world, and saying, darkness, you don't get to win anymore. Death, you don't get to win anymore. God has entered the world. God is now, God is in charge here, and defeated all of those things that, darkness and death and despair. It's all been conquered by the very fact that Christ was willing to take that on himself. In so doing, it is defeated for all of time. So although yes, our bodies die, we believe that we do not, that Christ has conquered death. And that although yes, the sun goes down every night, darkness never wins. The sun comes back up every morning. That there is, that all of that has been defeated. So that's a more Reformed view of the atonement. Again, there are as many as there are Christians, there are going to be theories of atonement. And we could spend a lot of time talking about them. I think that's an interesting thing to do. But the big difference in sort of the Reformed way and the way that the fundamentalists tend to look at it is the idea that God was so angry that there was some sort of price to be paid, and that Christ took on the punishment that just had to be inflicted on someone. And the Reformers then said, well, but God didn't have to. We said, somebody had to take the punishment. That the Reformers say, but he's God. So couldn't he just say it's forgiven? Why would someone have to be punished? If God
that's a good point. Because if God just wanted to just forgive us of sins, he could just say, "You're forgiven," right?
I think being a human and being put to death, I think is the only way we might even put it into some kind of understanding. If there would be something, I don't know, like a dragon, let's just say the dragon or something, that would be not understandable for us. I think that's the only, life and death is of a human is the only thing we probably can understand in any way.
Yeah.
Maybe just for me.
No,
Yeah, I agree with you.
it seems to me like when he was on the cross, that was kind of like a living sermon, a living teaching moment from courtesy of God, to let us know how much God loves us and how and the fact that well, anyway, how much he loved us.
Yeah, I think it was a representation of proper love. Like, I don't think we naturally know how to love each other.
Right.
Like God's physical, like showing us how.
I agree. Sacrificial love is not
right
natural to us.
Well, I think as humans, we all deal with death of another human. So I think that might be one understanding we can have.
Who was that? Is that Mike?
Yes.
He was sideways.
I also loved her allusion to the fact that because we are the receivers of God's grace and mercy, that we as Christians, because we have received that grace and mercy, sometimes can accidentally be the conduits of that grace and mercy to others. Yeah. It's kind of like, not that we bestow it, but that we just kind of are the conduits of God's grace and mercy, simply. Yeah.
I like the very last thing she said, which was, it's the antidote to who we are naturally. And that just spoke so much truth to me.
Yeah.
I think that's when someone asks, why do you want to be good? It's just, I think that's something you just, I don't know, you just feel when something happens. You don't just act on just your emotions. There's something, the Holy Spirit or whatever moves you to do something. It's not necessary that you like, well, I think I should do this or something. It just happens.
Yeah. It's
the accidental.
Who you are. Yeah.
Right.
I know she asked the question, what do you answer the question? What do you Christians do? What's your answer? That was the question she posed towards the end of the thing. And she says,
right.
And she says, the answer to that is to be agents of forgiveness and love in the world.
So it flows despite ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
I heard another answer to that question the other day, and the answer was to not cause suffering for other people. And then also, if you can, to try to relieve suffering for other people.
Yes.
She makes the argument that is not our human nature, but that is because we have received this grace has come down. It's like trickle down grace or something. Somehow God is full of grace. We are full, so full we are overflowing, and that trickles out to other people. What do you think of that? Do you think does that feel accurate to you, that it is not our human nature, that it's because of this gift we've received, or do you disagree?
I agree.
I agree too. I think because us as humans, I mean, I know I'm failing every day on things, and I'm short on, having a short nerve or whatever it may be, so. I might try in the morning, but that fails. Step out of bed.
I was going to say, I have a lot of shorteners. I have plenty of them.
If you have 3 kids, you have a reason to have
I
that.
have
Yeah.
3 shorteners.
Locked up with them for many weeks now.
Yeah.
Something came and it went. I'll be quiet. Oh, here it came back. It's like her message cuts through all the nominal Christians that many of us are most of the time, unless we really have let ourselves be flowed over by the Holy Spirit and by the power and the mercy and the grace of God. It's like if we can only be the conduit of that grace and that mercy when we probably accidentally, as we say, despite ourselves, allow ourselves to be the conduits, which means we have to be more into being God's instrument than being nominal Christians, which in America seems to be the norm. So anyway.
We tend to lean towards being individualistic. Everything is me, instead of somebody else, the other, and we use the term the other, we refer to them as them. And it's a negative term instead of us. Y'all watch This Is Us on NBC during the week. That's the whole point behind that. They're talking about different segments, and there you often hear them talking about a different group of people or so, and all of a sudden it comes to them. They're us. They're just like us. That's who we are. And that's what God intended us to be, and to be in community together, to be caring and supporting one another. And Paul makes that statement over and over again. Be the community of faith. Be the ones who give care. Bear one another's burdens, and so on. That's where I come at it and come from in terms of all of that.
Our own views of why we do what we do sometimes gets a little bit individualistic, selfish, really. We say, what's the point of all of this? Well, there are kind of 2 schools of thought. One of them is we do all of this so that we earn some sort of reward, that that the gates of heaven are opened up for us, which becomes very, very selfish. And then the other idea is we do all of this because it was done for us. And so what would be, what could we possibly do except to respond by giving it on to others? There's a verse in 1 John that says, we love because he first loved us.
Loved us.
Right. We do not love others so that God will love us. We love because God loved us first. So that's kind of the idea of being a conduit. It comes through us. God loves us so big that we have no choice but to overflow, and it will spill out to others.
Throughout all the stuff that I went through with Pete, Sarah, you know what I'm talking about. My brother, people kept saying, after we got to towards the end and so on, oh, you've earned another star in your crown. You've earned another star in your crown. Every something would happen because of the way that I reacted and responded to that. And I finally got to the point where it says, I'm so tired of getting another star. It weighs too much. Take it away. So it's not it's not because of something that we're going to get. It's something that we give. And it was hard. Yes, it was hard. But at the same time, I did it because of a family relationship. It was a person. It was part of my family, and I cared about that. I cared about his well-being, even though he didn't. I did. And but that's kind of hard for people to understand. Why do you do something like that? Why did you do that?
It comes down to too that you treat others how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And you know how you feel when somebody treats you bad. And I hope I never treat anybody the way I feel I've been treated before. So that's where I think I want to be the person that I want others treat me.
Yeah.
Or no, that was said wrong, but you know what I mean.
Sure. Well, in the Lord's Prayer, it says, let us live in thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And it's like, if we try to always live our lives in the Lord's will, then we can be better than we normally would be. So.
And what's the next line? It says, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors.
Right.
We have to be able to move beyond and be able to forgive in terms of that. And I think that's what she's talking about here, that forgiveness is not an action that comes to us, but we're also to share it and to move it beyond ourselves.
It flows through us.
It flows through us.
Which is contrary to my nature. So
it's still not easy to do. It's not easy to be forgiving toward the mean people or the people that have done something to you. It's easy to be forgiving to my family and friends and people in my close circle, but they're a lot harder to love and forgive.
And I've run across that in my own career. I've made people angry with things that I've said, and they get mad at me and yell at me. And, there were times when I just wanted to just walk away. And that at the other times I say, oh, I'm sorry I hurt you, or you're upset with what I said. It's okay to disagree. That's where we have to move in terms of that. So.
I think this circles us back to what Nadia Bolz Weber was talking about. She mentioned when Jesus was hanging on the cross, he looks out at all of the people who are chanting for his crucifixion and the people who have, hammered the nails and taken his clothes. And what does he say? He doesn't say condemn them. He says forgive them, for they do not know what they do. They had not asked for forgiveness. They had not admitted any wrongdoing. They had not asked for mercy and forgiveness, and yet Christ is hanging on the cross and still in agony, saying, "They're just human. Forgive them." Which is, when she talked about just how mind-blowing that is, that what he could have done, and what he chose to do instead. Where does that leave us then? Knowing that God's love is so big and God's grace is so overflowing, and we are conduits, but she says it's in spite of ourselves almost. So what do we do with that?
I liked what she said about that. That's an eternally valid statement, that it applies to us today. Sometimes I feel so stupid I want to slap myself. Times when I'm uncaring and unthinking, and and I know I hurt other people's feelings, and dear God, please forgive me. I need that forgiveness that came from the cross.
And it's good to know, to me, that when she said, God redeemed everybody for all time, and he is redeeming continually.
Yeah.
So it's like, it wasn't just a one-time thing. He is redeeming continually, because I know I need it. So
I think we all do it some one time or another, and probably more often than we think.
Every day.
oh, yeah.
Every day.
Times a minute.
Sometimes we forget to ask, so
Yep.
Even though we know he's there for us.
And the assurance is that even though we may not ask, it's always
I think I'm frozen.